Hello, I'm Andrew Stephen from the University of Oxford's Saïd Business School. Digital transformation, two words that perhaps strike fear in the heart of every corporate leader because they have to figure out how to digitally transform their organization to make it fit for purpose in today's day and age. Over the last decade, this has been a challenge for organizations of all shapes and sizes, in all kinds of industries and indeed all parts of the world. And we've seen the rise of roles such as Chief Digital Officer, Chief Data Officer, and much effort being put into all kinds of digital transformation programs and initiatives. One company that I personally believe has done an incredible job with digital transformation, turning themselves from a very product-centric, traditional go-to-market company into a digital-first company that is much more consumer-centric in its approach and much more data-driven and savvy when it comes to digital approaches to business and marketing, is L'Oreal. L'Oreal is over 100 years old. It's the world's #1 beauty company, and they've gone through a lot of change over the last decade. I had a chat with an old friend of ours here at the Saïd Business School, Lubomira Rochet. Lubomira is L'Oreal's first and only, to date, Chief Digital Officer for the entire group globally within L'Oreal. She joined L'Oreal about 7 years ago in 2014 and was tasked with coming up with a digital transformation strategy and really driving that strategy throughout every part of L'Oreal's business, which is in many countries around the world and more than 30 different brands within their portfolio. So not a tiny challenge. Lubomira and I had a chat about sort of what she did and her colleagues did to transform their business, make it more digitally enabled. We talked a lot about also what's happened in 2020, which has actually for them seen a massive acceleration in their digital transformation, particularly in the space of e-commerce and the different media channels that they can use to engage with consumers. And we also talked about what's next for a company like L'Oreal when it comes to digital activities and initiatives. I began, as I always do, though, by asking for a little bit of background, because Lubomira, interestingly, prior to her role at L'Oreal, had not worked in the beauty industry. I am really excited to welcome Lubomira Rochet back to Oxford, albeit virtually as opposed to normally in person. Lubomira is the Chief Digital Officer at L'Oreal globally, and she's there in Paris, actually at L'Oreal's global headquarters in the office, which seems like a real treat for those of us who are still stuck in spare bedrooms and living rooms and the like. So Lubomira, thank you so much for joining us and welcome, as I said, back to Oxford. It's great to see you, great to have you, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for having me. I'm super happy to be with you today.
So let's begin, because we've known each other for many years now, ever since I came to Oxford, and which was the early days of your time at L'Oreal as well. But the folks watching may not know sort of the journey over the last 7 or so years at L'Oreal, which we'll get to, but how you came to be L'Oreal's first ever Chief Digital Officer. So maybe you can start with a bit of background on yourself.
Well, so I was born in Bulgaria. I moved 17 times in my life and ended up being trained as an economist in Paris. And after the thing that really changed my life was I was dating a guy at the time, and he was very much into this internet thing. It was like 1998, something like that. And he actually created a company which is still around, which is called Qualys, which is really specialized into the security stuff. And he decided to move to the US to raise funds and stuff. And so I moved with him and went to Berkeley, where I started to study amazing things. Like at the time, it was the beginning of the economics of the internet. So I was fascinated about that. We were talking about like, is this a new industrial revolution, like the electricity or the railway or stuff? It was really interesting. And this is how I started becoming, interested in everything that is technology, digital, internet, and voila. And I started my career completely by chance, like in Capgemini, where I did some years of great, amazing, big IT projects, and then moved to Microsoft, where I was really privileged and really happy to have launched a program for supporting the startup ecosystem and the innovation ecosystem. It started in Paris and was scaled to the whole world. That was a little bit of a proud moment. And then I joined a digital marketing agency called Valtech that I co-led with a longtime partner of mine. And we ended up doing a project for L'Oréal. And the question was, we are in 2012, and the question was, how should I, me, Jean-Paul Agon, accelerate this digital transformation thing? Because I really think that it's a big thing coming and I want to be number one in it. At the end of the project, long story short, they hired me, and it's been 7 years that I am more than privileged, honored, and happy to lead this transformation at L'Oréal. Voila.
Exciting. And so, but you had it, other than that, consulting for L'Oréal. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't sound like you worked in the beauty industry.
Never.
So
Never.
Which is also, maybe we'll come to that a little bit as well, because, quite famously, L'Oréal, as with many companies in that industry and sort of consumer goods in general, tend to not bring senior executives in from the outside. They tend to, grow them from the very beginnings and in a nice way, brainwash them, I suppose. So coming in from the outside must have been an interesting
journey
experience as well.
Absolutely.
So I know you've got some slides for us that you wanted to go through, because it's been a really interesting year in your business, and so you're going to share some of those lessons learned, and I think highlights and interesting things that have happened with us, and we'll use that as a basis for discussion. So I'm going to hand it over to you with the first part of your presentation.
Cool. So you'll see that, in L'Oréal, we do beauty products, but we also do slides. That's a big part of the time. So we tend to really polish them. So I had my slides where I was like, I'm going to show my slides. The idea is, of course, to make it as interactive as possible. And I guess there's a chat, and please ask any question that comes to your mind. So there are basically three parts. The idea is really how digital has transformed L'Oréal. So it's a little bit of a history. It's very short, but just to have some part on it. Has transformed L'Oréal, how digital is leading us out of adversity, and adversity being equal to COVID in this particular sense, and how digital will shape the future of not only our company, but we believe of our industry, a little bit of more forward looking type of stuff, and maybe we'll pause at the end of each part, so maybe you guys can ask all your questions. So actually it's not. See, okay. So the idea is digital. We did not discover digital in March, which I guess helped us a lot in what happened. It's a little bit of a quick timeline. I can share the slides if you want after, if it's useful. So I'll not go through every little thing here, but suffices to say that this journey started in 2010, when Jean-Paul Agon, our CEO, declared the digital emergency. So this is the polite way of saying it. He said, what are you guys doing? This thing is going to change the industry. I want to be number one there. Let's go and chase this digital thing. And so what happened, and I very neatly said, it was an era of organic initiatives and projects across the group for 4 years. L'Oréal has a culture that is really embracing change. So the good news is that everyone started to do things since the big chief said we had to do something about digital. So everybody started doing tons of things, little initiatives here and there, tons of mini sites and stuff. Well, and in 2014, when I arrived, the idea was not at all to evangelize why digital was important. That was in a way done by our CEO, which helps. And so my whole point was to set up the strategy for the transformation and to make sure that we were focusing our energy and efforts into meaningful and impactful and value creative stuff for digital. So this is where we very famously coined our strategy at the time. That was very, very simple. The strategy was very simple. It was all about three things. The first thing was accelerating our e-commerce. At the time, it was 2%. 2% of the turnover was in e-commerce, 2014. Fast forward, now it's 25%. But it was only 2%. And my intimate conviction at the time was that this would develop very strong. And if we wanted to keep, winning market shares and being number one in our industry, we had to take that wave and to really accelerate strongly on e-commerce. So that was number one. The number two topic was all about reinventing the marketing model of L'Oréal. And that was a big deal. Because, as you know, L'Oréal is very much driven by marketing, and we praise ourselves of being really good at that. And so when you arrive in 2014 with no prior experience of beauty, or no of CPG, coming from a digital background where everybody was thinking that your job was to repair the printers and set up the Wi-Fi, it was brave to say that we would be transforming the marketing model. And what was that consisting of? Essentially of saying, okay, we are very good at advertising on TV, but the way to connect with our consumers and to prescribe our products is really changing very fast. And so we have to adapt our marketing towards meeting the whole triptych of paid on earned. We were doing good at paid in a specific context, which was TV. We had to magnify our paid strategy and embrace all the digital touch points. So today, 65% of our advertising is in digital, 65%. At the time, it was less than 10. So one, we amplify paid by embracing the digital touch point and platforms. Two, we start to create content and we become almost a media. We become a content machine producer. Today, just on our website, we have more than 1.3 billion visitors every year. It's huge. I mean, it's not our core business, doing content and that, but we've scaled that. And the third thing was, it was the beginning of the whole, influencer movement, etc., with the YouTube, the tutorials, very strong in beauty. And so I said, on top of doing very good content and advertising, we really have to embrace this whole influencer marketing thing. So that was the triptych, and it was coined famously as a 20-50-100. Why? Because we wanted to reach 20% of our turnover by 2020 in e-com. We wanted to reinvent our marketing model and that all our brands become 100% love brands, so 20-100. And by doing all of that, basically what would happen is that we would have a lot of data. And gather a lot of data on our consumers, their consumer decision journeys, what they were doing on our websites, how they were interacting with our advertising. And so this whole thing generated a ton of data. And the 50 in the 20-50-100, the 50 was about, we wanted to have 50 data on 50% of our consumers. And so that was the basis of the whole transformation program. Fast forward to today, what happens is that we have reached 25% of our turnover in e-com. 65% of our media is now in digital. We have reached 1.5 billion consumer data points, so beyond the 50% that we wanted to reach. And our brands have become really, digital powerhouses. We're working in the world with more than 80,000 influencers. And we have worked on that, on the backbone, on a very strong enabling agenda. And those are really two things. One, the HR transformation of the group. HR transformation meaning recruitment. So we recruited 2,500 people, digital experts and specialists, and we upskilled 46,000 of L'Oréal people to digital. That really helped ingrain this transformation in the core business and not keep it as a separated, digital silo. Digital is everywhere. Digital is in marketing. Digital is in commerce. Digital is in communication. Digital is supply chain. Digital is everywhere. And this is also because we train everybody to do that. So first enabler was really the HR transformation. The second enabler was everything around digital IT. This is why we started to work on the group data platform, the website factory, the content factory, etc., etc. So we really completely rethought our tech and IT structure to accommodate new D2C, direct to consumer connection world, real time world, and it was a hard part of that transformation. So that's the second pillar, the tech and IT, and the third pillar of the enablers was all around the performance and the measurement. And so we created this famous tool called Cockpit that is really screening and crawling 50,000 data sources as we speak. And that gives us and me a very, very granular view into our performance in digital across paid on earned, across CRM, across everything we do, in fact, in digital. And we are able to track in real time the performance of everything we do. And more importantly, and we can come back to that if you're interested, having all this data help us derive and infer the golden rules of good execution in digital. When you run 10,000 campaigns per year, you see what works and what doesn't work. You see, it's very clear. You have all the data, so you see what works and what doesn't work. So you can run tons of tests to understand what type of content is working on Facebook, what type of headline is working in CRM in the title of your email. You can understand what type of assortment is working on Amazon versus on Sephora. And so thanks to all this data, we start to have a very clear library of what we call golden rules. That are really, in a way, the Bible or the basis of the good execution in digital. And so this is what all the teams are operating under in the group. The last thing I wanted to talk maybe to you with you about is the acquisition of Modiface in 2018. So that was a very exciting moment. Modiface is a startup that is based in Toronto, in Canada. And that is a startup that is specialized in augmented reality and AI for beauty. And so it's a startup that was there for maybe 5-6 years. We used to work with them. And their specialty is to create things like virtual makeup try-ons, where you can try on a shade or a look on your face by photo, but by video also. Virtual try-ons for hair color, but also skincare diagnostic, hair care diagnostic, shade finder. So it's really a company that uses augmented reality to create experiences through technology and what we call services that we give our consumers to help them trying, making the right choice for them, and buying our products. So I think that was a very, very important milestone of our transformation. Voila, in a nutshell, maybe those are very important points. Yeah, we think of ourselves as digital athletes. Why do we say that? It's because to be good at sports, you have to have a very strong core, a core. This is why I chose this particular picture, because I think that the plank is one of the best exercise for your core. Well, that's you all know that, guys. And the core here is really about the talents. So the upskilling, the recruitment, that was really the core of our strategy. If you ask me, a digital transformation is not about technology. It's about people. It's about talent. It's about upskilling and reskilling people. You have to have, on top of having a strong core, you have to have very clear objectives. So that was really the purpose of the 2050-100 that aligned the whole company around, value creative objectives. And you have to have a very strong, data points to understand if your performance is getting better or not. So this is the whole, idea behind the cockpit. And this cultural aptitude, which is always to seize new challenge, scale the performance, and this is really what L'Oréal culture is very good at. I told you a lot about those numbers, so I don't think we need to get back to it. Basically, 25% of our business is in e-com. We will land around 27%, I guess. 62% is of our media is in digital. 1.5 billion consumer data points. And 46,000 people upskilled. Those are old figures. We are keeping upskilling people like crazy. And we have 1 billion visits to our Modiface services already since 2 years. And that has been a great story of scaling. Well, maybe I'll pause here to take your questions on the, let's say, history of this transformation.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, for those of us sitting here listening to you, I think it's very obvious that we are right now in a masterclass on digital transformation, and it's nothing short of incredible what you and your colleagues all around the world have managed to do in these 10 years, and certainly accelerated over sort of the last few for sure, and this year too, I guess, which we'll get to. So a few questions have come in. But I might actually just wanted to follow up first on the people aspect, because I think that's, I wholeheartedly agree that digital transformation is not so much about the tech, it's the people. And, how do you go about upskilling, 44,000 people and keep on doing it? Because, digital upskilling 5 years ago would have covered things that we might not cover in digital upskilling now, because there are all sorts of other things that we have to keep on covering. So it's a moving target, and that's a lot of people. So how does that work?
It's a lot of people. Well, actually, we started, I mean, it really depends on your company culture. But within the L'Oréal context, we started by training and upskilling the top. So we started with the executive committee, and I had for 3 years, I had every quarter 1 full day with Jean-Paul Agon and the teams. And there he was all hours. So we could do everything we wanted with him. So we did things very strategic. We had him meet, partner startups, GAFAs, whatever, for him to understand, to meet people, to get some reflexes. We took him in Google Analytics. We took him in DoubleClick to see how a campaign is operated, how it works. Of course, we never asked him to be fully proficient in all those things, but at least he can have a feeling of how it works. So starting with Jean-Paul himself, then the executive committee, we took them on learning expeditions in China, in the US regularly to meet partners, and for them to really create this common agenda, this common alignment around the 2050-100 and how that could be declined in the company. Then we took all the management committees. So 65 countries, 36 brands. It's a lot. It's a lot. And to be honest, for the first 2 years, I was my life was in a plane, and I was really visiting with my team, every mancom of this company. And we created at the time a very interesting thing that was a game. We wanted to gamify it and not just PowerPointing it, because we know it's less efficient, even if our sites are beautiful, but that's not the point. So we created a game, and the game was what we call the wine game. So the idea was you had your own shop and you were selling wine online, real wine selling. And so the whole mancom was with us for 2 days, and we run this game of who's gonna win the biggest amount of bottles of wine sold. And using that game, we were able to insert everything we wanted them to know, to learn. We aligned them on the vision, on the strategy, and then from there on, we cascaded that to everybody. We used a lot of master classes, live streaming. We used a lot of that. We were early live streamers in the company. And also, maybe one important point is every content we produce, even for internal presentations, very boring stuff like that, every internal content we produce, we think of could reuse that as a support for a training for XYZ population, the sales, the marketing, etc. So this is how we ended up, training 46,000 people.
It's amazing. And just as a follow-up to that, Martina has asked a question about, in the context of upskilling, what skills have you identified as the most crucial? And has that differed around the world in different markets?
So it's a good question. Once it's evolving all the time. I think at the beginning it was all about digital marketing and making sure that our teams were upskilled into creating content that was fit for the digital age, making sure that our media, I mean, we are the third advertiser worldwide, so we really had to shift our media online, that we were good at executing and on media, because the media was completely changing. We were going from an inventory / slash big volume slash rebate game to a trading game. So it's like a financial trader. You have to trade your media. So it's a completely different thing. So we really started by strengthening digital marketing and media. Then we accelerated on the e-com because we really had to staff this. Then we moved to the data piece and especially the CRM piece. And then now we are moving to a whole new things that I'm gonna talk in the third part around consumer care, community management. So it's really an ongoing and evolving roster of skills, and we really try to focus on the most important phase by phase type of skills.
So let's talk about this year now, and there's a few questions that have come in, sort of just asking about, okay, so what has really happened this year, and how have things changed, and everything else. So I know that's sort of the next part of what you want to talk about in terms of sort of how digital has helped the company through adversity. So maybe you want to share a little bit about that, and then we'll come back to the questions.
Cool. Let's do that. So moving one slide. So the idea is what happened during COVID. I usually say that COVID was the biggest digital stress test ever, and it really made a difference between those who anticipated, prepared, built capabilities, versus the other ones that had to kind of catch up in a super emergency and burning platform mode. So all those figures. I mean, I'm not gonna comment that. It has been a massive, when digital and online was the only gateway you had to the world. Of course, everything boomed. Like the time you spent on the social networks, the time you spend interacting through conversation and messaging with the brands. I mean, everything spiked. And one of the big thing, of course, was the TikTok phenomenon. I'm sure we'll talk about that. Has been massive. I mean, the acceleration of TikTok coming from 0 to 2 billion, downloads in 2 years has been tremendous. And of course, the e-commerce has grown tremendously. What really digital helped us do during the crisis is four things. The first has been it allowed us to absorb the decline and the losses that we had to endure from the brick and mortar. 2 of our 4 divisions go to market and channels were closed. The salon for hairdressers, the salon were closed, and everything that was around the luxe, so the perfumery, the drogueries, etc., were closed in many countries. So when your full channel is closed, we were very happy to have e-commerce to continue to be selling to our consumers. So just for you to know, and it's a very confidential figure, of course, we compensated 65%. 65% of the losses of the brick and mortar were compensated by a channel that was weighting only 15% last year. So imagine the amount of work, sleepless nights, and all of that, but it has been paying off. The second thing is that really through the crisis, we shifted even faster our media to digital. So at the peak of the crisis, it was 77% of our media were in digital. And we also shifted, and maybe we can come back to that, to more e-commerce performance type of media to make sure that we were supporting our e-com performance. And at the end of the day, we saw like the balance between brand building awareness type of media and lower funnel performance media that really shifted towards more performance media. And the last thing that is really very striking is how it really strengthened and our connection with our consumers. Since the shops were closed, actually the consumers came directly to us. So we were swamped in the consumer care centers. The community managers were not sleeping. Like we were all answering everywhere, because actually there was really this flooding of, a consumer wanted to connect directly with us, which is not something we had completely planned for. So we really had to adapt there. And all of that allowed us to gain market shares, but I'll come back to that. The market has digitalized tremendously. We've seen the beauty market and the beauty industry become more connected, more social, more conversational. That's not gonna really surprise you. More entertainment, more e-commerce, more coaching, and all of that was really done live, and the explosion of live streaming was really a big thing. Few focus points just for you to know. So the COVID-19 has really accelerated the channel shift from online to offline, from offline to online. And what you see is basically it took us like 3 years to go from 8% to 16% of our sales in e-commerce, and it took us 8 weeks to go from let's say 17 to 34. So that was just simply amazing in terms of the scalability, the agility, and the resilience of the team, and it shows you the magnitude of that shift that happened. The important news here, because people often think that the e-commerce is a China and US story. Actually, today it's the rest of the world that is leading that growth for us at L'Oréal, and I've taken some figures here. You see growth coming from everywhere, from Japan up 107%, Canada plus 100% almost, even a smaller, less mature country like Spain for e-commerce up more than 80%. In the UK, it's more than 30% of our business, 31% of our business that is now in e-commerce. It's amazing. In the US, we have doubled our weight of business in digital, in e-commerce. So you've seen countries like emerging countries like Brazil, Indonesia, India up triple digit. So it has really been a very even growth. And today, and I'm really happy to share that with you, because who would have thought, well, I did, but who would have thought that in 2014, that 6 years later, e-commerce would be the number one L'Oréal market. So if e-commerce was a country, it would be our number one country. Number two would be the US, and number three, China. But it gives you the magnitude of that channel for us now. Those are the latest figure at the end of September. It's 4.8 billion. So that was a small focus on the e-com. And the other thing that was pretty striking also was the acceleration of everything that was direct to consumer. Direct to consumer. You know that L'Oréal is not a direct to consumer company. Originally, we are selling to customers that are selling to consumers, so it's more a B2B2C, let's say, model. But during the COVID and because of everything we know, consumers started to buy more online with our own brands. So on the Lancôme.uk.co, on the Yves Saint Laurent, directly on our website. People started to address us more and more through online conversations. It was by phone, by mail, by messenger, by WhatsApp, by any type of devices, and we had a big uptake of the whole live streaming thing. So we started live streaming on all our brands' websites, and it was really very effective. In less than 8 weeks, we did more than 1,000 live streaming sessions, and it gathered, like, outside of China, where it's already a big thing, it gathered more than 18 million people, and it actually really came and fueled our whole, data strategy and data collection. So in fact, because we were ready, because we invested in capabilities, in people, in processes, in golden rules, because we invested in data, we were able to really, take this wave and ride it. And so we, in fact, emerged with a stronger leadership position in digital and in overall in beauty after the. Not that it's after, because we are still in it, but during COVID. And so it was great from a market growth and from a market share gain point of view. It was amazing in terms of new traffic, new consumers, 53% new consumers. That was really a good thing, and it was a very good period for our brands, with 5 of our brands in the top 6 for one of the biggest classification, that is L2 Gartner for us in China. Voila, what I wanted to share maybe on the second part, which is what happened during the pandemic and still happening during the pandemic. So happy to take any question on that.
And these are amazing results, and so there's tons of questions here. But what really struck me is we think about not only the beauty industry, but a lot of industries. When we think of how's the pandemic shaped buyer behavior or customer behavior, we think rightly so about this rise in e-commerce. But what I found interesting from what you were saying there is it's not just that; it's also been this explosion of digital media channels and increasing weight in existing ones, but then also coinciding with the rise of TikTok, for example, but then live streaming, beauty tutorials. All of this stuff has been happening this year. So it's not just sort of at the bottom of the funnel in terms of, okay, people have to buy online because they're in a lockdown and the shops are closed, but it's the whole experience, which I think is fascinating, but then also really, really challenging. So I guess, again, in the spirit of the people side of this, how have the brands and all these different markets been adapting rapidly, I guess, from the media side of things? Because that's a massive shift as well. I mean, it's been happening anyway in terms of a shift from, non-digital to digital, but it's not just that shift of spend. It's all these extra new activities, and this is a massive change. So I guess maybe what some of the learnings have come out of that, because it's a lot of experimentation on the fly, right?
It is. So maybe from the situation point of view, what happened again, and we're still in it. So, but what happened is, of course, the media shift, the acceleration of the media shift. Within the media shift, there was a shift in the shift, which is what I said, like this acceleration of the e-com and lower funnel media, which is a completely different way of doing things. I mean, the rise of co-op media that we are doing with our retailers. It's something that we never did at that scale. So basically, it's, for example, us and Boots doing, things together, doing an advertising together to drive traffic to Boots, for example. That would be something we did. So that's one. The second thing is new touch points. And I think I would say that TikTok, live streaming, and teleconsultation, virtual consultation were very important things. So TikTok is again, I mean, it's the same story that we had with YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. At the end of the day, it's a new thing. It's massive. It's super scalable. It's super resonating with the new codes and the pop culture. So vertical formats, short videos, music, entertainment, authenticity, relatability, whatever. The whole challenges thing that is very interesting from a brand perspective, because you put challenges out there and people are really, it's like crowdsourcing your marketing operations in a way. But again, you have to reinvent the way you do content, because the way you do content in TikTok has nothing to do with the way you do content even on Instagram, nor even with YouTube. So that's the second thing. And the third thing was about this whole virtual consultation thing. We had, when the stores were closed, we had like thousands of BAs, beauty advisors, that were, not out of job, but with the stores closed. So, but they started doing things online. So they started, we gave them some tools on teleconsultation. And so they started doing teleconsultation. So we had to adapt in 3 weeks. We built a whole virtual consultation thing with Modiface, where you could not only do the teleconsultation, but also try on with the BA, etc. So you could have good discussions. In 3 weeks, I mean, it would have taken us 3 months or 4 months to deliver that. And so how did we do that? Number one is that, in fact, we have really networked the whole organization with a digital governance. So there's me, and then there's CDO in the divisions, CDOs in the brands, CMOs in the zones, CMOs in the country. So all of that is a network. We were meeting every week. With content, best practices, priority setting. And this has really worked very well for us in terms of circulating at the speed of light, everything that was done everywhere so that people could adapt. And the sheer scale of L'Oréal allow us to do many experimentations. And since we have the data, we can definitely know what works and what doesn't work. So we were really super stringent in terms of that. And I think it helped tremendously.
I mean, it's amazing. And so there's a few questions here that I think are related to that. I mean, one of them in talking about, doing these experiments and testing things out with partners, and someone's asked about, tensions in that. And, for example, with Amazon, but you could imagine with any sort of other retail partner too, for that matter. But obviously Amazon is a special one. So, how does that end up working when you're working with a partner, but it, there's all sorts of complexities in that. So how do you approach that? So I'm thinking, for example, when, I think it was, I forgot now, but maybe a year or so ago when, you put virtual try-on into Amazon, for example. So maybe just walk us through how some of those relationships work, given the inherent tensions that you could also have.
I think I would say that we have always struck, I would say, the good balance in that, because we've always considered those platforms as partners first. And I think we've been building this trust for 7 years now. Yeah. And we have I think I can say we have a very good relationship with the GAFAs in general. It comes from different places. First, I think they respect very much what we do, and they see that we are fast, that we are willing to experiment. We do all the alphas and the betas of the world. I think like we did them all. They really have respect with what we are building. We have a lot of respect with what they are building. We are having very difficult conversations when it comes to data privacy, brand safety, and stuff like that. So it's not like it's an easy partnership. So we always have the strong conversation and difficult conversation, but we come from a place of respect, which I think has been very important, because those partners, they help us when we have to define those golden rules I was telling you about, the golden rules of good execution in influencer marketing, e-commerce, D2C, media, everything. We are working with them. We have JBPs, so joint business plans, every year. Every year we have 4, 5, 6 priorities, and we have a whole research and learning agenda that we do together. So for example, if 1 year it was all about understanding search and how to win on the search algorithms. That was a common agenda. So they are not gonna reveal 100% of the secret sauce, but they're gonna reveal enough so that we can work better and understand better how to be good at their game. Because the better we are, the more we spend. Huh? So it's a win-win thing at the end of the day. So I think coming from a respectful, yet demanding but respectful partnership helped us a lot, because it's also a way to scale. Google is having relationship with all our countries. So if you are aligned at the top on the priorities and everything and the research and learning agenda, then at the end of the day, it's a machine that helps you cascade. The 46,000 people that we have skilled, we also did with partners and typically with them.
So again, the scale keeps on amazing me and how this is all done. But let's talk about D2C a little bit, because you mentioned that as well. And obviously that's a newer model, although not entirely new for some of the brands within L'Oréal, but certainly a newer model than if we look at a number of other competitors in the market. And so there's a few questions here. For example, Marianne has asked about brands like Glossier and how that's affected, because they're DTC and a lot of other things. And Alex asked about sort of similar types of companies in the UK, like the Hut Group and so on. And so it's sort of interesting. I mean, Google, has called the likes of L'Oréal as sort of the incumbent brands, and then there's these insurgent brands. And I kind of like that sort of dichotomy, but also it's kind of fun to see when the incumbent becomes the insurgent as well, which I think is in some sense maybe what you're doing as part of this transformation. But how has it been shifting brands that have never ever had that direct customer relationship, in any way, let alone selling directly to them, to get them, into a more D2C model mindset, business, approach. I mean, and again, doing it fast because it had to happen quickly. So how does that work? Is it about looking at the DTC players, not just in your industry actually, but elsewhere, and learning from them, or is there a sort of a more unique L'Oréal approach to this?
No, I think, of course, it helped. I mean, seeing the rise of those indie brands / insurgent brands / whatever you want to call them has, of course, been a big wake-up call, because, in 2014, there was no burning platform agenda. It's easier to do a transformation when you have some sort of burning platform. Like if you happen to be in the music industry in 2010, you have a big burning platform. If you are in travel industry or hospitality industry and there's booking.com, you have a big burning, platform. For us, we were growing nicely, very nicely. We were delivering our 20% recs at the end of the year, and there was no big danger there. And suddenly, it's not a burning platform as the music was, but it starts to be a little bit of a music with all those new players coming out of nowhere and everywhere. And it was this moment where, 90% of the growth for many, many years was done by, let's say, 10 players in beauty. You know them all, from P&G to Unilever to Estée Lauder to LVMH, etc. Vela, Henkel. And And suddenly this 90% shifted into like 60% of the growth coming from a myriad of small things, but still, so that was a little bit of a moment. And then of course we studied very carefully and with a lot of respect what they were doing, because they had this native new codes, new ways of doing that we would not think about. So we bought some of them. We bought brands like NYX Professional Makeup at the time. We bought a brand like Paul Priot. It's really saying a lot of the insurgency of those brands. And so we bought some of them, and we started to really understand. And like I love reverse engineering. I think it's really interesting as a mindset to reverse engineer because there are patterns in digital. In digital, you have a lot of patterns. And if you understand the patterns, how the platform works, how the algorithm works, how the brands are built, what is the canvas for building brands in the modern age, it's something that you can replicate. So of course that was very much helpful. But also I would say that we have this quality in L'Oréal, which is we are very much product centric. And with the years, we started to be much more consumer-centric. And being consumer-centric is also something that forces you, because people are really actually wanting to talk to you. And so they do it. And they do it because they have all the means to do it. And so you have a choice. Either you don't answer or you answer. And if you start to answer, you have to get organized, scale your operations, put tech everywhere and do it. But maybe I'll come back to that later.
Well, so maybe we should move on to the third chapter of your presentation, because I know we're otherwise going to run out of time, and I want to hear about what's next and what the future holds.
Cool. So I'll try to do it fast.
And tons of questions about things like AR and the like. So I think it will come in right at the right time.
So I'll try to go fast. So few trends that we see coming. I'm sure none of them will surprise you very much, but I think it's good that we remind us of where we go. The future of beauty is retailtainment. I think the shopping experience has not changed for many years. The shopping experience is about amazing PDP, product detail page, with good conversion rates, and that's it. So we believe that there is something that is happening that is really this move from convenience to experience, and it's a combination of this live streaming, live shopping stuff. Gamification is starting to play a role. And I think that's interesting. What we see coming from China is really interesting out there. And the whole notion of services, like to embed services as we did with our virtual try-ons or our diagnostic or our shade finders, is really something that is reinventing in a way the shopping experience. That's really cool. The future of beauty is, of course, e-commerce. We've discussed about that because it's really key. But there's one thing I really want to insist is that when we think of e-commerce, people think of a monolith, e-commerce. But in fact, even as we speak, there's already 7 forms of e-commerce. It's not one e-commerce. So you have the D2C, you have e-retail when you partner with brick-and-mortar people going online, which is a very different way of doing things that if you partner directly with a pure player, such as an Amazon or a Tmall or a Look Fantastic for the UK. And then you have the social commerce, and the social commerce comes in different forms. You have the live shopping with an influencer on Tmall or on WeChat or on Instagram. You have the affiliate social commerce where a consumer or an expert sells a product on, for example, Instagram with a promo code, and then you redeem it, and it's really an affiliation model. But that is happening on social platforms. Then you have group buying that is start to become a big thing in China, and we see it's amazing for those of you who are old enough to remember. There was a thing called Groupon that did not perform that well, and that a little bit kind of died. And today, Pinduoduo, which is this app in China, is completely reinventing the codes of group buying and like à la Groupon, but it actually is really, really very successful. So we see a trend with group buying. And then we have the whole subscription-based e-commerce à la Dollar Shave Club, for example, that was bought by Unilever recently. So even when we say e-commerce, I mean, it's a different e-commerce. And for us, our objective now is that we've reached a quarter of our sales into e-commerce is to it's not that we want to very quickly reach it, but if you just project, if you do the math, mechanically, given the growth rates of e-commerce and the fact that it's a sticky thing, it's not like a bubble that happened through COVID, mechanically, we will end up being at 50% of our sales in like optimistic scenarios are in 2024, and more like a long-term scenarios is 26, but like it's tomorrow, right? So it's coming. The future of beauty is advocacy and social selling. You know, we live in this peer-to-peer economy. People trust people, and it's a very good thing for us, because if you think about it, L'Oréal has invested for 110 years, and this is really a big differentiator with maybe some, you know, indie and insurgent brands, is that we've invested in relationships for 110 years with stylists, hairdressers, dermatologists for our cosmetic active brands, beauty advisors, makeup artists, consumers that love our brands and use them every day. So in fact, if you think about it, you have and we've done that calculation, you have a potential social sales force that is more or less 5 million people. And those 5 million people, today, they have the tools through social commerce, notably, to become sellers and advocates of your brand. So this is really something that is opening, and I could talk about that for hours, completely new horizons for us, and really setting us in this new game of the social commerce. And this is going to be super exciting. Conversations. I often say that marketing is moving from being a very visual art to being a very conversational art. So I told you, during COVID, it was amazing. We had this plus 40% beauty conversation that happened to us. We doubled our reply rate being like when we reply to consumers. We are now at 90% of a small set. We have to reach 100%. And it really implies a complete reorganization of everything that is frontline consumer engagement officers. The CRM team, the consumer care team, the community management team, but also our BAs, our beauty advisors. They are becoming increasingly more EBAs, so virtual beauty advisors, and spending more and more time online. And this is going to be really exciting too. Tech and services, I told you about Modiface. Those are the big hero services we have to date. We have many others, but those are really the big hero services. We've seen an usage multiplied by 5 during COVID. This is how we reached the 1 billion, visits on a virtual makeup try-on, a skincare diagnostic, a hair color try-on, a teleconsultation. So this has been really amazing. I'll go quickly on that. And the last thing is, we believe more and more that, of course, the future of beauty is personalized, but also personal and private. First-party data is key, as we know. But I don't know if you're familiar with this concept of zero-party data. I'm sure we can discuss about that. Zero-party data is basically when you have put value at the center of the data exchange, which means, and this is why for us the agenda around services is so important, because at the end of the day, when someone takes a skincare diagnostic, you can recommend the right routine, the right skincare routine for that person. It gives value to the consumer, and the consumer is then happy to provide the data. It's a very different model from the first-party data the old one, à la papa, as we say in French, where basically you visited my website, you left a cookie on my website, and I left a cookie, and then I'm gonna retarget you forever. It's a very different model, and this is really where the services strategy and putting the value at the center of the exchange make it very, very, very important. And all of that is, of course, very strongly linked to very fundamental ethical and data privacy, issues, topics, challenges, and I can definitely talk about that if you're interested. And that's the last slide. Really, what we are projecting ourselves is we are projecting ourselves in a world where 50% of our business will be in e-commerce, where 50% of all our marketing means, not only media, but all the marketing means, all the A&P will be digital. Today we are 35%, so it's already a big change. It was like 3% when I came, and a world where 80% of all the interactions with our consumers will happen online through TikTok, virtual try-on, teleconsultation, CRM, like all these collection of touch points, and we have to be good at all of them.
So voilà. Yeah, and I think the thing that we're getting a lot of questions around, and I'm certainly very interested in talking a bit more about is the digital services, because I think that's definitely been an area where you've talked about sort of beauty tech as sort of a way of seeing things, and it seems to be working. I mean, I remember way back when you showed me Makeup Genius, gosh, that's a long time ago.
That was a long time ago.
And then that happens, and then move more into the Modiface world, acquire Modiface, and now there's this sort of plethora of digital services that are sort of built on largely augmented reality type applications. And so there's been a couple of comments and questions in here. So someone sort of talked about, I guess, describes themselves as a bit of an AR or VR skeptic. So how is virtual try-on or virtual skin diagnostics, all of these tools, not a novelty? So I think part of it comes out of what you were just saying, actually, about zero-party data in terms of this value exchange. But I guess there has been, I don't know if it still exists, but certainly if we think way back to Makeup Genius as the beginning of this, that novelty hurdle to clear, so that consumers didn't just see it as a gimmicky, fun thing to, let's see what my baby looks like with makeup on, or my dog, or I love doing it because it's a great gimmick to show in class, basically. Oh, look, here's the professor with virtual makeup. But how do you clear that hurdle to convince consumers in a very tangible physical product, world, for you to buy into the digital services and see that value exchange?
So first, where this student is absolutely right is that it can be very gimmicky and very gadgety, and it sometimes is, and it usually was, and it sometimes is. The difference is that we have really paired the AR, the AR, VR, I think it's still a way to go, but the AR capabilities of Modiface with the research and innovation, history and science of L'Oréal. And this is where what was gimmicky becomes less gimmicky, in the sense of, for example, when you try on a shade of lipstick, because basically you are in front of a Walmart aisle, and you have no clue about what, type of lipstick what shade you want to try, or even worse, you want to change your hair color. That's a very engaging, gesture. And then you have this ale, and you know nothing. And you see the pictures, and you see how it will look on me. So there is a real consumer pain point behind that, especially if you operate in the mass market. Sometimes when you are in a perfumery, it's easier because you have a BA, a beauty advisor. She can help you try, etc. But if you are in a mass market, it's really a real consumer pain point. So there is a consumer pain point. We have worked our ass off to make sure that it was realistic. The rendering was realistic. The science behind the skin diagnostic was real. And this is how we come up with tangible answers. And then if you mix that with a prescription, this is where it's interesting, because if it's just to play with it, okay, it's fine and it's good fun, but that's it. But then we are building tools, for example, what we call the face architect. So you take a picture of yourself. The whole thing makes an analysis of your features in AI. And then basically, based on the science that we made an algorithm of very famous makeup artists, we are able to recommend you the right routine, the right shades, the right look, the right routine for you. Same for skincare, based on the 17 signs of skin concerns, from hydration to pores to clarity to wrinkles to everything you want. We are able to recommend you the right skincare routine. And that has a strong value from a consumer point of view. And this is why it's working. And just few figures, when we have the control group, when we don't have a service, when we have a service, the conversion rate is multiplied by 3. So this has been consistent across the board. And so it's a sign of the fact that it's actually a business driver.
Is that true is that just in mass, or that's across the board? So
that's across the board. That's across the board, even for more professional divisions. Yeah. And it's true on our estates, and it's true also in the estates of our partners, because we've integrated Modiface into many retailers or platforms. It's the same plus cross 3%. 3 times higher conversion rate.
Again, it makes the business case, and it's good for the consumer. And I guess you learn a lot through, these science projects, basically. I mean, and that's, maybe downplaying the nature of these initiatives, but there's a lot of learning that I guess goes on within Modiface as well as within, the team of L'Oréal. So we're unfortunately almost out of time, but I'm gonna just kind of to a couple more questions, I think, and there's tons in the Q&A, and so I think we'll absolutely have to have you back later on in the
Absolutely, I'll be happy.
Hopefully you can travel and we can actually, have you in Oxford later maybe in the spring. But one thing I was going to ask actually, and this is a question from Jayshree, which is actually talking about sustainability, which I think is obviously a much bigger thing to talk about than just in a digital or only in a digital context. But let's talk about it in the digital context, because I think, something of increasing concern, when I talk to, sort of people in WPP, for example, or in Google or Facebook, or those sorts of organizations, they're looking at sustainability as as their vendors to the likes of yourselves and Unilever and everyone else, and you're making commitments just as the other big players are around net zero. So where does digital come into this? Because I think maybe we don't think about digital as much with sustainability, but these things require electricity, for example. So has that come much into sort of the CDO world, or is that still more in the more obvious aspects of packaging and raw ingredients and so on?
So thank you thanks for this question, because I think it's absolutely massive and still under considered and under worked part of the transformation. And I think every year we have this big digital community gathering. We call it the DAS, the Digital Acceleration Summit. And every year I have these 2 slides at the end on what prevents me from sleeping at night, type of thing. And 2 years ago it was 2 things. It was one, the sustainability question, and the second was the ethics of data and of algorithms. So let's call it a tech for good agenda type of thing. And in fact, we have progressed significantly on the ethics of algorithms, and it's harder to progress on the sustainability, meaning like the whole, carbon emission, because of what? Because of e-commerce. E-commerce is a polluting industry for now. And 2, because of all the data storage, the cloud, and everything we use, it's also a very high consuming, from a resource and ecological resource point of view industry. On this, we depend so much on our partners, on the big, e-commerce platforms. We depend so much on the big data centers to make sure that we progress. That we have really started, including in those famous JBP, joint business plans I was telling you about. We have now a systematically tech for good agenda. And so what we are currently doing in L'Oréal is one, baselining what we do, which is super hard. You cannot imagine how hard it is. I mean, I was like, let's baseline the thing. It's really hard because it's so scattered. You have everything everywhere, so it's complicated. So we are gonna baseline our carbon emission typically, and then we're gonna with our partners work systematically on an agenda to reduce and maybe one day be able to go to zero. But if you think just of e-commerce, it's about packaging, it's about last mile. Last mile is so costly, so it's a whole industry that has to reinvent itself. So there's a lot on us, of course, and we will do everything we can, but it's also an industry conversation that we need to. And I don't feel enough like a burning platform sentiment here, and I think this is why I'm really pushing everywhere I can, and also with the WFA, with every industry body that we can find, we push that agenda. So we're not there yet. I think there is a nascent prise de conscience, a nascent awareness from that, and I'm confident it will move, but it's not moving fast enough, if you want my honest point of view.
All right. Well, I think unfortunately we're going to have to stop it here because we are out of time. But it's always an absolute pleasure to have you join us, and it's always great to catch up and just chat about all of these things. And it's a really exciting time. It's been obviously a hard year for the world, but I think there's some very, very exciting things going on and lessons learned, and and a lot of optimism for the year to come. Which is not too far away now, thankfully. So Lubomira, thanks so much for joining. We will definitely get you back, hopefully physically to Oxford, next year. And thanks again for your time today. And all of you watching, thanks for your questions.
Yeah.
We didn't get to them all, but there will be more opportunities for sure. So that's it. Thanks a lot, everybody, and we'll see you all soon.
Thanks for having me. Have a good festive season. I send you good health and good energy to everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, Lubomira. Thank you.
Bye.